we'll get the meeting started. And just a note from our previous presentation by Chancellor Soblick, there was a differential tuition presentation that was scheduled to be provided. The slides are in onboard, and so take a look at those slides, curators. They're in onboard. We didn't receive the presentation. If you have any questions, please direct those to Ryan, okay? So, Michael, I'll turn it over to you for the Governance, Compensation, and Human Resource Committee meeting.
Thank you, Chair Chapman. The Governance, Compensation, and Human Resources Committee has 2 action items today. Our first action item is to establish a new collective rule for the Board of Curators' Statement of Values. We as a board believe it is important to establish guiding principles for our internal and external interactions, as well as our oversight responsibilities and strategic vision. Further, in memorializing these in the collective rules, they serve as a continuing guiding principles into the future. And that collective rule is 10.025. Does anyone have any questions about the proposed collective rule? Hearing none, can I have a motion from the committee and a second to approve new collective rule 10.025, Board of Curators Statement of Values, as outlined in the materials for this meeting?
So moved.
Second. You did the work.
Cindy, can you call the roll?
Curator Burnsick,
Yes.
Oh, we're in open session. All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Chair Chapman, on behalf of the Governance, Human Resources Committee, I move to recommend to the full board that the new collective rule 10.025, Board of Curators Statement of Values, be approved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Okay, any further discussion on it? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Okay, any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. All right, thank you, Michael. Please continue.
For our last action item, I would like to make a motion. I would like to have a motion and a second for the committee to move in executive session later this afternoon.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Oh, no, wait, this time we do have to do that. Cindy, can you call the roll?
Curator Burnsick,
Yes.
Curator Holloway,
Yes.
Curator Winokur,
Yes.
Curator Williams.
Yes.
Okay, you have all votes in favor.
Curator Chapman, this concludes the public session of the Governance, Compensation, and Human Resources Committee meeting.
All right, thank you, Curator Williams. Curator Hobrock, I now turn it over to you for the Finance Committee meeting.
Thank you, Curator Chapman. Good morning, or good afternoon now. The Finance Committee has 1 information item and 4 action items. Vice President Rapp, would you please?
Thank you, Curator Hobrock, and I know we discussed, we'll try to work through this quickly. So you had a lot of information contained in your materials. I'll go to just this slide right here, give you a summary. We were going to go over year-end results for FY22. Much of this, there's a detailed report contained in there along with the slide presentation. Overall, our consolidated performance in FY22 exceeded our targets. We did have some headwinds in terms of investment losses that Tom Richards, our Chief Investment Officer, went over at the September meeting. And additionally, each university and MU Healthcare are in a different place. We saw some declines in healthcare, as to be expected, with what we're seeing in the rest of the industry. You know, and I think as we move forward, we'll be working with our campuses on their financial plans along with MU Healthcare. But I'd be happy to answer any questions about our FY22 financial results.
Are there any questions for Ryan? I have 2 issues I'd like to get in front of the board, if we could, Ryan. I know that in this material they talked about projected enrollments by Moody's and everybody else. So as we presenting your budgets going forward and you talked about your 5-year plan, I would ask that you stress test those 5-year plans to enrollment projections so that you give the board an idea of what could happen as enrollment, meeting those enrollment numbers or not meeting enrollment numbers?
Certainly, that's, I think, really important. And when we bring financial plans back in February, we'll be able to show you how those plans react to shocks
Yeah.
in enrollment.
I want the chancellors to hear me on this one, that I'd like to see, I know you're going to make assumptions, but let's go plus or minus 10% on those assumptions.
Certainly.
On enrollments and what that's going to do to us on our financial pictures. And then secondly, I know you and I have had several conversations about the unfunded vested liability and the pay down on that. And I know you're getting ready to review of the actuaries again on where we stand as part of the budget. I would really like to see you give us some options on balancing long-term liabilities and meeting those versus short-term needs, and let the board take an active role in giving direction as to which way we would prefer to go.
Yeah, and I think through the February and April meeting, we'll be able to do that. Our pension plan doesn't run on our fiscal year. It runs from 10/1 to 9/30. So it just ended. We are, as you noted, updating our actuarial report. Along with that, at the April meeting, we'll bring forward some recommendations that we've discussed before, as well as the possibility of buying out some liabilities for vested terms.
Any other questions concerning the financial? First action item, Ryan, is student housing and dining rates.
Yes.
Again, you guys have reams and reams and reams of information. So, Ryan, quickly give us the overview of what we want, or you just want to go right to questions?
I'll just quickly note that our rates are proposed to increase for our predominant plans anywhere between 5.6% and 7.6%. Most of the drivers on this is largely driven by inflationary cost pressure that we're experiencing, maintaining the buildings that we have. In one of the charts, we do note, while we're seeking these increases, we're still not outpacing inflation with what we're proposing today, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions?
I would ask, if you don't mind, Ryan, let's say we make these increases, these recommendations. Are we profitable in each of these?
No, I think we're break even in these operations. They do cash flow. We do have work to do at all of the universities to improve that. You know, when we bring forward an individual project, we expect a debt service coverage ratio of 1.5 times. Overall, we expect them to be at 1.0 in terms of that. But we do have work to do at all of the universities to varying degrees to build up what I would view as our capital reserves to make sure we can make the investments we need to in the future.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Student housing goes, excuse me. As far as student housing goes, what, are we, is our capacity good? Is there a bigger demand than what we have? How do, on the campuses, how are we doing along those lines?
The occupancy rates for both Missouri S&T and MU are where we want to see them. I think we're in the high 80s, low 90s. We're a little lower than that. I know it's somewhere in the materials. We're a little lower than that at UMKC and UMSL. We don't anticipate adding new housing stock at any of the universities. It doesn't mean we won't have some renovations or things like that down the road.
But of course, if we lower the vacancy factor, we're going to do better on our money.
Yes, correct.
Or raise, yeah, go, raise the number, yes. But I think it's important to point out that KC, if you read the footnotes, is carrying a substantial debt, Ryan, 20 million?
Yes,
$20 million debt on a dorm that they've closed down, and I think have now torn down?
correct.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a debt they've got to pay off without any revenue to support that debt, and it's coming out of campus operations.
Was there litigation on that building?
I understand it was settled. There was a settlement agreement on that building when years ago.
That's correct.
It has been settled.
We could discuss that with, yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? Ryan, I have one request in the future going forward and that's to go to what Curator Holloway stated. I think that we need to run, Chair Ray Lehman, I'm sorry. We need to take more of a business approach and profit-centered approach on the running of these. And secondly, I would request that we break from a financial reporting to the board, dining away from housing.
Yes,
So that we can look at them two separate operations.
We can separate, going forward, we'll make sure it's separate in the materials. And then as we move forward with our financial plans that come forward in February, we can focus on what our expectations are from the various auxiliaries. I will tell you it's going to vary based on the type of auxiliary operations of what we would expect, but we can go over that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'm looking for a motion from the committee to approve the housing and dining rates as proposed in the materials.
So moved.
Is there a second? From the committee, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Finance Committee, we recommend approval of the dining and housing rates as published in the materials presented to us today.
All right, thank you, Curator Hobrock. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Back to you, Curator Hobrock.
Our next action item is project approval for Missouri Psychiatric Center for infrastructure upgrades and renovations for the Emergency Department of expansion of MU.
So this is a $12.5 million project. It was in the capital plan in September. It's really driven by the Women's and Children's project coming on campus, and is also the reason that we're recommending the project move forward. As it's schedule constraints that's driving the project delivery of construction manager at risk. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions? I could make my standard statement about your method, but I'll drop that one today. Any other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion from the committee to approve the project for the Missouri Psychiatric Center infrastructure upgrades and renovations for the Emergency Department expansion MU as presented in your materials?
So moved. Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Finance Committee, we move to recommend to the full board the Missouri Psychiatric Center infrastructure upgrades and renovations for the Emergency Department expansion project for the University of Missouri Columbia campus as outlined in the materials for this meeting.
Thanks, Curator Hobrock. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Back to you, Curator Hobrock.
Thank you, Chairman Chapman. Again, Executive Vice President Rapp, project reapproval of Medical Science Building renovations MU.
Thank you, Curator Holbrook. This was approved in September as a $20 million project. We had Phase 2 included on the capital plan. What we're seeking approval today is to bring the two projects together for a $51 million project. Largely, the first phase was doing a lot of infrastructure upgrades. The second phase will renovate and expand some lab capacity, research lab capacity at MU. This is really being enabled by the fact that we have a HRSA grant available to us, and has really been the work of Senator Blunt and the earmarks that we've received. So we are grateful for that. We are also recommending this be delivered as construction manager at risk. It is not driven by that we have to have an aggressive, well, we do have to have an aggressive schedule because there is a time clock on how long the funding is available to us from both the state and from the NIH.
Is there a motion? Any questions? Excuse me. May I have a motion and a second from the committee to reapprove the renovations of the medical science buildings on the University of Missouri Columbia campus as outlined in the materials?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Finance Committee, we move to recommend to the full board that the renovations of the Medical Science Building on the University of Missouri Columbia campus as outlined in the materials meetings be approved.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? And the motion carries. Okay, back to you, Curator Holbrook.
Thank you, Curator Chapman. Again, Ryan Rapp, the approval of collective rules and regulations 140-012, investment policy for the general pool.
Thank you, Curator Holbrook. We are just seeking approval to adjust the investment policy for our general pool. We currently have the Portable Alpha program available to us both in our retirement plan and endowment pool. This would seek up to a 15% allowable range. We would initially target 10%. This is something that Tom Richards, our Chief Investment Officer, and I have reviewed with our Investment Advisory Committee. The goal here is to see if we can add some additional return while understanding the risk associated with that to our general pool, which in turn would increase the strategic dividend that would be made available to the universities. Are there any questions?
I just want to say I have to abstain from this subject.
Let the record so note. Thank you. Seeing no other discussions, may I have a motion from the committee? So I've got Todd and to approve the CFR 140-012 as presented in the materials today.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions, Jeff Lehman?
Yes.
Abstains. The motion carries. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Finance Committee, we move to recommend to the full board changes to collective rules and regulations 140-012, investment policy for general pool for the University of Missouri as outlined in the materials before you today.
Thank you, Curator Holbrook. Do we have a second?
Second.
Give a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those in favor say nay. Do we have any abstentions?
Yes.
Jeff Lehman is an abstention. Okay, the motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the business of the Finance Committee today. Thank you for your
Okay, thank you, Curator Holbrook. Curator Graves, I now turn it over to you for the Academic Student Affairs, Research, and Economic Development Committee meeting.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, our committee has one information item, the Intercollegiate Athletics Annual Reports, and one action item, an amendment to the MKC faculty bylaws. Begin with the Intercollegiate Athletic Reports. These annual reports are required pursuant to CRR 270.060, intercollegiate athletics, and are a way for the board to get a high-level overview of the UM system's athletics programs. You'll note that all reports are included in your packet. However, we will only hear from UMSL today. We will receive a brief presentation from each athletic director at subsequent meetings held at their respective universities. Here to walk us through UMSL's report and answer any questions, Athletic Director Lori Flanagan has joined us and will give a brief presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I just want to take you through the numbers. Collectively, athletics here at UMSL, we had our best year ever in 21-22. And on the screen, you can see that the sports that we currently offer are 19. We just added 6 in the last 2 years, and that would have been men's and women's track and field, indoor, outdoor, and cross country. We currently belong, as many of you know, to a Division II conference slated as a Great Lakes Valley Conference. It currently has 13 members in it. And we currently today have 272 student athletes, and that's a 10% increase from a year ago. So I'm going to take you through what we had as a success by the numbers. And if you can, again, look at your screen, we had our first national individual champion at the collegiate level ever in the history of athletics here. And obviously, it's a golfer. We're very, very excited about that. Joel will return this year and hopefully defend his title, but that is our first national individual champion. We had 2 conference champions in our men's golf program and in our men's basketball program, the first ever in men's basketball to win a conference championship. We had 2 coaches of the year, our women's basketball coach and again our men's golf coach. We talk about the Commissioner's Cup and the conference that we belong to, and the Commissioner's Cup is they take the top 7 sports that we collectively all have to support and sponsor in our conference, which would include men's and women's basketball and soccer, baseball, volleyball, and softball. And they collectively figure out mathematically how you finished in conference standings in those 7 sports. And this last year, the highest we've ever finished was 4th. We also had our men's golf program finish 5th in the country when they were at the national championship last year. Then we look at our conference sports and the all sports trophy, and again, we sponsor 19 sports. So how did we do against those 13 other schools in our conference? And overall, last year, we finished 6th. Of those 19 teams, we had 7 teams advance to the NCAA tournament. Again, the most that we've ever had in a year. Probably the highest accolade that an athlete can achieve is an All-American status, and that is based on their athletic and their academic status, and we had 8. I will also say that 5 of them were women. I'm always preaching the women's part of college athletics, but obviously having that opportunity, and the women have been very, very successful. And I think the thing that goes really unnoticed a lot is there's 300 teams that are Division II in the country. And collectively, again, we finished 56th in those standings at the end of last year when you compiled everything that we did athletically. Again, that is our highest finish. So that was our athletic side of our success. The academic side, as we always talk about, what we have to do is graduate our student athletes. We continue to maintain and exceed our overall student athlete population with their grade point average of a 3.4 or above. And that is, we have had 10 consecutive semesters of being at 3.4 or above. Last spring, we had 53 students out of our 270 that were straight A's. We look at the Division II and the academic success that they have, and what we do is we look at the incoming class, and you'll listen to Mizzou and Kansas City talk about their graduation rates. We will talk about our academic success rate, and that includes transfers and first-time freshmen. For the year of the class 2015-16, following it 6 years to graduation, we graduated 85% of those students. And we had 156 of those students achieve what we call the academic all GLVC student athlete success, and that is any student athlete with a 3.3 or above for the preceding 2 semesters. So again, you can see that over half of our students are excelling academically. To support that, we also did a major fundraising campaign to sustain our academic profile, and that is we raised a little over $200,000 to enhance our academic, what we call study hall on campus. And that obviously has been completed and was opened in August of this year, and obviously we're expecting to maintain, if not get any better in our academic success. So collectively, like I said, we had our best year ever. I was told I had a 2-minute drill, and that's all I have for you today. I will remind you that we will be hosting, as UMSL, the 2023 Women's National Championship in May. So if any of you are golfers, we'd love to have you come and be a part of that championship. You can work if you'd like, but we'd love to have you be a part of that. That will be the first national championship that UMSL Athletics has ever hosted. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Well, congratulations on your success.
Thank you.
What's the key to your success?
The key to our success.
Your success, all your student athletes and your programs.
I think I'm just going to reflect and say that we are a program that works very, very well together. From a female standpoint, I worry. I worry a lot, so I am their mother. I act as a mother hen. I think we have great staff right now. We have great coaches. We have a great staff that's very, very small but works very, very hard. I think UMSL as a university and where it's located, and the academic degree programs that we have to offer, the fact that we do not give people an opportunity to get lost in our system. I think the university as a whole really supports athletics, and so if a student is having an issue, we can resolve it. We build great relationships with our students. And I do feel that when they leave here, they feel that they've been well taken care of, well educated, and we've made them a better person. I think that is our success. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is a proposal to amend CRR 300.020, faculty bylaws of the University of Missouri, Kansas City. Dr. Jennifer Lundgren, UMKC Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor, will discuss the proposal, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Curator Graves. As you are all aware, approximately 2 years ago, as part of the UMKC Forward initiative, we engaged in a realignment of our academic units. As a result of the realignment, the UMKC Faculty Senate has a request for minor modifications to the faculty bylaws. These are outlined in your materials, along with 2 additional minor modifications. These revisions were approved by the Faculty Senate and by the full faculty. They were reviewed by the Office of General Counsel and endorsed by Chancellor Agrawal. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Anything? Okay. If there's no further discussion, may I have a motion and second from the committee to recommend approval of the amendments to CRR 300.020, faculty bylaws of the University of Missouri, Kansas City?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Are there any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Academic, Student Affairs, Research, and Economic Development Committee, I move to recommend to the full board that the proposal to amend CRR 300.020, faculty bylaws of the University of Missouri, Kansas City, be approved.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Do we have any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes the business of the Academic, Student Affairs, Research, and Economic Development Committee.
Okay, thank you, Curator Graves. Curator Winokur, I turn it over to you for the Health Affairs Committee meeting.
We're going to suspend that committee meeting since people have the materials and it didn't have any action items, but thank you.
Okay. All right, so we are moving on to our strategic theme discussion. Is that right, Cindy?
Correct.
All right, strategic theme discussion regarding enrollment strategies. I'd like to now turn it over to Kim Humphrey, Vice Provost for Enrollment Management at MU, to introduce our panel of presenters and kick off the discussion.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing us to come and talk to you today. We're going to talk about enrollment trends and demographic shifts and pipelines and marketing and enrollment in general. I'll introduce my colleagues and then they'll reintroduce themselves when they come up. But Doug Swink from UMKC, Reggie Hill from UMSL, and Doug Spivey from Missouri S&T. So I'll start the presentation. They'll each take a turn, and then we'll have questions at the end. Let me see if I know how to run the clicker. So this slide shows changes in the number of high school graduates. And the number in blue is what we fondly call the cliff. So we know that in 2008, there was a recession. People had less babies. And so you fast forward 18 years, and we have fewer high school graduates. This shows the change from 21 to 26, and the states in blue are showing growth. The states in red are showing declines. So Missouri and the surrounding states are all going to stay relatively steady or show some modest growth, with the exception of Illinois, and it's going to drop by 5%. Fast forward out to 2031, and it looks drastically different. There's a lot more red. There are a lot fewer high school graduates. Missouri drops by about 3%, Kansas 4%, Illinois drops down to 12%. Still an important market for all of us. They have a lot of high school graduates. We'll see increases in Texas and Florida, and for some reason, North Dakota grows by 38%. But when you do the math, that's not very many students, and we won't be recruiting there. Digging into Missouri a little bit, you'll see that we will hit a peak in 24-25, and then we will decline until about 2034. So it's important for us to look at head count, but it's also important for us to consider the chart at the bottom, which shows changes in demographics. There's going to be a 20% increase in students of color in Missouri, and why that's important is, on average, those students tend to be more first generation, and they tend to have lower incomes. So it's important that we not only be aware of that when we recruit our students, but we make sure that we have the student support on our campuses to make sure that they can be successful. If we talk about Missouri graduates and if they go to college, where do they go? Well, 80% of those stay in state, which is what we want. You know, we think like coaches and we want to protect our borders and keep our talent in state. But we lose a significant amount of students that go to Kansas, Illinois, Arkansas. This is 2020 data. Arkansas is much higher on the list if we look at that more recently. If we look at where students that come to Missouri to go to college, where are they from? Well, again, most come from Missouri, but we gain a lot of students from Illinois, Kansas, Texas, foreign countries. These areas are largely where the four of us we recruit, or we have regional recruiters. So if we look at our Missouri public high school graduates, and we look at public because we have more information for them, the private schools aren't required to submit their data. But looking at 5-year trends, the number of students that go to a 2-year college has dropped from 16,400 to last year less than 15,000. Looking at the number that attend a 4-year college, that drops from 23,400 down to less than 21,000. So what are they doing? You look at the bottom line, they're going directly into the workforce. In 2017, that number was just over 14,000. Last year, that was 15,300. Whoops, go back. So we knew the cliff was coming, but the pandemic has really accelerated the cliff. And so what's important, we hear from high schools that some students were just absent. You know, they weren't logging on to their Zoom classes. They didn't like online classes. And the result of that is the testing centers are reporting the lowest test scores, ACT and SAT, that they've seen in decades. So students aren't as prepared. We know that a significant amount of students just decided not to go to college. They weren't ready. They weren't ready mentally. They weren't ready academically. So they decided to sit out for a while. But we expect some long-term effects from the pandemic as well. Recent reports show third graders aren't reading at the level that they should be. And the chart at the bottom shows that third graders that are reading below level, less than 40% of those go on to college. So you know that we talk, you know, our main recruitment areas are directly out of high school or from community colleges. But there's a couple of other populations that we also continue to recruit and need to think about that. And one is the non-consumers, that group that I talked about in the last slide that just sat out for a year. We know there's a significant amount of students who apply, they're admitted. Okay, that slide went away. But they just didn't enroll. They may have even deposited and didn't enroll. We saw that at our institution. Can you guys see yours?
We can still see
Okay,
it.
good, good. Another important population is stop-outs. And those are students that are at our institutions and for some reason decide to take a semester off or a year off and they don't come back. So it's important that we continue to engage with those students. We know there's 30 million of those nationwide. And if they're going to come back, they tend to do that within the next year. So we have to remain in contact with those students and try to make sure that we make that path easy for them to come back. Those students tend to be more women than men nationally. That's not true at Mizzou. It's more men at Mizzou. A lot of them are working full-time, but the majority of those had household incomes of less than $50,000, and that shows in the last bullet that 42% say they leave for financial reasons or to help with their families. So the University of Missouri systems, we are similar in a lot of ways. We also have a lot of differences, and so I wanted to talk about those today. The table on the left shows first-time college students. Mizzou is a lot bigger than the other institutions. The number of first generation, much higher at UMKC than the other three. Pell-eligible students, much higher at UMSL and UMKC. When it comes to Missouri residents that attend, we're pretty similar in terms of percentages, but underrepresented minority, UMSL and UMKC have more of those. The table on the right shows transfer students. So Mizzou's not normally considered a transfer institution, but we bring in a lot of transfers. First generation transfers, Mizzou and UMKC have higher percentages. Pell eligible, again, that's UMSL and UMKC. Missouri residents have, relatively steady among the four, but again, underrepresented minority higher at UMSL and UMKC. So some specific things to Mizzou, I just want to describe a little bit about our incoming class for fall 22. Our average ACT was a 26.5. 66% of our students came in with some kind of college credit, either dual credit from high school or AP or IB credit. And our top feeder states are, of course, Missouri, followed by Illinois, Kansas, Texas, Minnesota, Colorado, Iowa, and California. We have regional recruiters in all of those states except for Iowa. Our transfers came in with a 3.2 GPA and more than 50 hours of college credit. You normally think about transfer students as being from our local community colleges, and that's where half of our students come from, but we also get about the same amount that come from four-year institutions, and half of those come from other Missouri public institutions, four-year institutions. And now I will turn it over to my friend Doug.
Well, good afternoon. Again, my name is Doug Swink, and I serve as the Assistant Vice Provost for Enrollment Management at UMKC. And I first wanted to start by thanking the board for inviting us in today, just to let us talk about the work we do to manage enrollment on our campuses. And as stated here, I'm going to focus on marketing and enrollment growth strategies that we're all focusing on. Before I do that, I do want to just kind of highlight a few of the attributes of UMKC and the work that we're doing there. First of all, as Kim stated, we are in some challenging times as we think about the enrollment cliff and all the different pressures that we're under to ensure that we're able to maintain and grow enrollment at our institutions. That is very true at UMKC, specifically as we're seeing a changing demographic with our populations, the pressure on transfer students with those declining markets as well, but also being able to support those students when they enter the institution. I also just wanted to share that, as you know, UMKC is located on a state line for Kansas and Missouri, and we have to be really strategic in how we're recruiting those students, mainly because we've got students that are focused on a lot of different regional schools in the area, so a lot of competition, but also making ourselves affordable and marketable to those students. In addition to that, as we think about making sure that we're recruiting students in the right way, we have to have the programming in place to want to attract them and then to retain them. And so there's just a highlight quickly of some of these programs that we have available through our KC Scholars and Block Scholars, which are initiatives that provide up to $5,000 a semester for students to attend school, typically high-need students. And then those other programs mentioned really focus on the student success pieces that we foster and work to ensure that students can understand all the support that's going to be there for them from the first gen to MOCA. Yes, sir.
Oh, it's just a curiosity question. Are all of our campuses at capacity? Because when we talk about, recruiting, if we're getting to capacity, it seems like that's the goal, right? Are we at capacity, or is there room for more students on each one of our campuses?
I would say there's a lot of room on each of our campuses.
For more students? Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's a great question, something that we're always reviewing and analyzing as we kind of shape out our recruitment cycles as well. And then, again, some of the other support services would be the Men of Color Initiative, ACE, and Avanzando. A new program we just launched this year is the Professional Career Escalators, and that was really put in place so that students could come in and get a lot of support in different subject areas like medicine, health studies, law, but in particular, really setting them up with mentoring, leadership, as well as really great connections to industry. So we're really excited about that new program. And then finally, another attribute that I wanted just to mention is that our leadership has reworked our scholarship model. And in particular, we've unveiled and expanded our RU Advantage Scholarship. So now we completely close the gap on students for their tuition and fees if they're Pell eligible. So we're very proud of that, and that just takes us another path forward for affordability. Next, I just want to kind of focus a little bit on the landscape. As Kim indicated, with all the different changes in terms of demographics and things, this makes us be laser focused on a lot of other initiatives, in particular vendor solutions. So each of us here have a lot of different vendors that we partner with to get the work done. And at the end of the day, we don't want a cookie cutter approach, or yes, we don't want a cookie cutter approach because we want to ensure that we're able to showcase our institutions in the best way possible. And with that, these vendors continue to evolve and they continue to change overnight. So we're all doing a lot of work trying to, one, keep up with the changes, but also find the new enhancements that are coming to ensure we have all the tools available to fully recruit students. In addition to that, students are very savvy shoppers, and so are their parents. And with that, they expect personalization in that recruitment process, particularly thinking about that Amazon experience. That's just how they're accustomed to think, using those web tools and all those kind of things. So we have to be authentic in how we showcase our institutions, but also provide transparency. And I use that word just because as we start to think about affordability, we need to make sure students understand their award offer, what it's going to cost, how to navigate all of that, and then follow that by streamlined processes. So as a student inquires, applies, and is admitted, we need to make sure that that is a process that takes them from point A to point B without any disruptions. And that's how we're going to end up yielding those students. And then finally, I just want to share that career outcomes is another big pivotal point that we have to always be mindful of, because that's students are coming here, we need to ensure they're going to have jobs after college, and that also goes into a lot of our strategies. In addition to that, as students start to decide on an institution, there's a lot of factors that go into that, and this slide happens to be from RNL, which is a partner with some of our institutions. But more in particular, this data is from 2019, but it hasn't changed. And so these factors are really the top ones, such as cost. So again, that student looking at the affordability side, the financial aid package, what we're providing that student to show the affordability, and then the academic reputation of the institution. But you can see on there's a lot of other pieces that go into that decision-making process, which includes obviously the geography, the location of the campus, the personalization, and many others. So some of those I already touched on.
Is there anything about this ranking that's changed in the last couple of years, like pre-COVID, post-COVID?
You know, that's a great question, but no, my colleagues and I talked about that this morning, and no, this is still very standard. The top three continue to be that, even after
That didn't
COVID.
surprise me. I thought the personalization or something like that, or size of institution might have changed as people just, and dealt with life differently.
Yeah, not that we're aware of, but if we were aware of that, we'll be sure to share it with you. So as we start to think about how we're attracting students, this takes very innovative communication strategies. And so each campus must work to showcase their brand and return on investment. And as I talked about earlier, this affordability piece is, at the forefront of everything that we're all doing to ensure that we're showcasing that in the right way. Kim mentioned earlier that a lot of high school students are deciding not to go to school or onto a college. And that's where we all have to provide the right framework to say, well, here's the reason you should be going. Once you get a degree, you're going to be able to extend that earning power over many, many years, as opposed to a student who might see today that, oh, wow, it's $20 an hour. I don't, why take out a loan? That's where we have to do our work to really showcase that. As I talked about affordability, we also need to think about that from a student life cycle while they're on our campuses, particularly around the scholarships to get them in the door, but also the financial wellness piece. And that's something we've implemented at UMKC so that students can understand budgeting, what it means to take out a loan, and help them throughout that process.
So do you see less people show up at like the fairs, et cetera, or is it that they're just not even, are they starting the process and then dropping out, or we just can't even get them to start the process?
I think sometimes it's not even getting them to start the process, and I think my colleagues would agree. It's just that kind of mindset right now that we need to continue to empower and change.
Okay.
And then I also just wanted to highlight quickly that we've worked hard on our campus to issue microgrants, so small awards that will allow the student to continue to persist if they have an outstanding balance, and we're continuing to expand those initiatives as well. In addition to that, all the good work that we do also needs to come with showing the resources that we have in place to support the student holistically, both inside and outside of the classroom, and again, to really showcase that around student success. So thinking about, student affairs and some of those other attributes. This next slide, innovative solutions is kind of what I titled this, but what I wanted to really focus on was that screenshot. So there's our student, right? And they're there on their phone. That's their emojis, that's their emails, that's their texting, that's all their different things that they're doing at one time. And so we have to be able to engage in that and engage in the right way. And so campuses now must really start to think about all the strategic and digital marketing so we can meet students where they are through geocoding and all those aspects, so we're targeting the right students. In addition to that, I highlight here on this next point about the customer relationship management system, and that would be the CRM. And I say this, that I think this is one of the most important systems we have right next to our student information system, because this is our digital front door. And so this is how we're getting the inquiries, getting the applications, and moving students through. As we do that, we have drip campaigns built in, and drip campaigns are simply ways to engage students along the process so that they're staying engaged. But you can't just do it with an email. I think many of you know, or you hear, students don't always read email. But in addition to that, we have to implement texting now. So it's one-way, two-way, and we have to really utilize videos so that we're engaging students appropriately. And then finally, you can't do this without the support network of the student. And so parents or whomever, their guardians, they're really critical in how we recruit the students and make sure, and we have to ensure that they're receiving the same information as the student as they're making these decisions. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Reggie Hill, who's going to talk about the pipeline. Thank you.
I had a question.
Yes.
How important are campus visits
They are critical.
as they're shopping campuses, all the different campuses, right?
Yes, that sometimes can make or break a student's decision to attend. And so that's something that we all focus on in terms of delivering the right visit, whether that's a visit day or a personalized tour on our campuses. So they remain probably the #1 deciding factor sometimes in a student's decision. And I hope my colleagues agree. Great.
So you're concentrating on those, or any new innovations in the way you invite them and what they do when they get on campus, when they on their visit? Is it a 4-hour thing, a 12-hour thing? You furnish a way for them to spend the night and do a second day, or how do you go about it?
I'd say it varies by each of our campuses, and I think well, still there, okay. I know that with our institution, we continue to survey students to find out about their experiences, and then we also build in different programming. So it could be a visit day, it could be an overnight, it could be a bus trip from like St. Louis to Kansas City. So we try to put a lot of innovation into that, and again, making sure the parents are part of the process as well.
Okay, great.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. And now Reggie.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you, Board of Curators, for this opportunity to present the enrollment pipeline. And the enrollment pipeline is heavily influenced by what Doug and Kim mentioned, which is the amount of students in the marketplace and also marketing communication. But first, I'll give a brief overview of UMSL and its student profile for the incoming class. Our first-year students held at roughly a 25 ACT, a 3.4 GPA. Our top feeder states was Missouri and Illinois, and our trending states was Arkansas, Kansas, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and a number of other. We did bring in a larger freshman class, roughly 50% increase in our first-year students, and our transfer students had a GPA of roughly 3.0. And transfer students represent roughly 70% of our incoming class. That was slightly up, relatively flat. But then our feeder schools, which are Missouri community colleges, although they saw a reduction in enrollment, we stayed relatively flat. And we also sustained our graduate and professional schools, and our feeder states for those programs are Missouri and Illinois, and our feeder country is India. But historically, the traditional recruitment pipeline or the enrollment pipeline consisted of lead acquisition and search, what we term search, and nurturing prospective students' inquiries through what we deem the enrollment funnel. And after purchasing hundreds of thousands of named prospective student data from companies like ACT and SAT and CapEx, colleges and universities developed a linear email communication campaign and then sent bulk print materials to prospective students. We know that that approach is no longer relevant. And then finally, we scored the region, the nation, and sometimes the globe attending recruitment events at high school visits and college fairs. We have to rethink this strategy. We have to figure out where the students are and really go to the market. And so in previous decades, students entered our system or our institutions through what we coined the enrollment funnel. Again, a high number of prospects and inquiries. We converted the applications to admits and then deposits, and then our yield was the number of students that decided to enroll in our institution. This linear process serves institutions well when the volume of students were high, but again, because we are looking at a lower volume of students, we need to take a different approach to how we enroll students. And we must remain competitive, moving from what we consider a pipeline approach to an ecosystem approach. And most of our institutions' enrollment management must develop a full service agency model by integrating data analytics and marketing insights, enrollment marketing and communication, advanced enrollment marketing and communication, financial aid, leveraging and optimization, and as you mentioned, a authentic campus visit experience. And then recruitment has to be take a full service student engagement approach. And over the last decade, we've begun to reimagine and develop a new language to articulate the prospective student enrollment journey. So now, students enter the enrollment ecosystem through various channels, as Doug mentioned, ranging from traditional recruitment methods to advanced customer and digital engagement. And I'll pass it over to my colleague at Missouri S&T.
David Spivey, Vice Provost for Enrollment Management. Newly in the seat as of November 1. So great to meet you all. So we'll talk about the professionalization of enrollment management, but of course, like my colleagues, I will jump right into some unique attributes of Missouri S&T. Like my colleagues, we are largely at the freshman level, Missouri-based. 76% of our student population at the freshman level is a state resident. We remain highly selective as an institution, meaning a collaboration of the GPA and the test score. Our average GPA is a 3.81. Our test score is a 28 on the ACT. We have seen some recent growth from out of state or for out of state. Our top 5 contributing states are Illinois, Arkansas, Texas, California, and Kansas. And we've seen some recent growth also, small but recent, in our international student population at the freshman level, some outreach that we've done recently. So what makes S&T shine? We have a student experience that is second to none. We have a focus on innovation in STEM education. We also have a wonderful student experiential learning that our students really benefit from. We use that in recruitment that really brings the student to S&T in a variety of ways, and we're proud to say that our Cummer Vanguard Scholars hosts 800 students this year, and we're well on our way to 1,200 next year. And our Cummer Innovation and Entrepreneurship Doctoral Fellows is currently at 30 students, and we're growing that as well. Our transfer population declined over the years. However, we've seen some recent growth in the 2022 year. We will continue that growth, and on the trajectory, it looks well right now. And our graduate level growth in recent years has been largely international non-thesis. So our largest market, India, followed by Africa. So as we have alluded to, the enrollment management profession has been changing, right? It is no longer a build it and they will come model. So All of these strategies that my colleagues have talked about before really require the professional who is sitting in the seat to be very different than that person was 10, 15, 20 years ago. So demographic changes mean greater competition. This means that those individuals are now competing with one another, and they're using technology they were not using before. We'll get to this in a minute. This is requiring a more nuanced approach, a surgical approach to enrollment management. Data analytics come into play in a way they have never come into play before. Student interaction and engagement is heightened, personalizing the custom visit for students. How do you make it meaningful for the student? How do you make it meaningful for the family? How do we create an experience that is singular to S&T, UMKC, UMSL, or Mizzou? And the partnership of university staff and community across campus to see these folks, these admissions counselors, the folks within enrollment management as professionals is key. So I wanted to give sort of an overview of what a typical enrollment management office, and again, this is typical in quotations, might have looked like 10 years ago or more versus what a successful model might look like today. So 10 to 11 recruiters or so. Those recruiters were hourly compensated. Typical skills of those individuals were travel and recruitment, right? Boots on the ground. Where are my students? How am I going to talk to them? Where am I going? Visits, fairs, conferences. Presentations, outreach, events, inquiry management. If a student asks information about S&T, how do we manage that student from inquiry all the way to enrollment? Determining markets based on data and some feeders. Where are students coming from and where do we put our efforts going forward? And then managing articulation and partnerships from those institutions that might be transferring students or those high schools that are feeding us students as well. You'll notice, and this is sort of color-coded, none of that has changed. Okay, we are still doing that. What's required of our recruiters, however, are that they're doing all of these in the dark blue: data analytics, lead search, marketing staff, and social media. So we're taking those positions, and if we don't have those positions in the institution, assigning those to recruiters. Okay. Now, in a fully fleshed out organization, enrollment management office, those are very highly skilled positions. You have a person that looks and does data analytics, looks at your market trends, looks at where your students have come from, and what potential might exist to focus direction of those recruiters in the future. The same thing for marketing, internal marketing staff or a very highly involved central marketing staff that can move quickly to answer the needs of enrollment management. Someone that focuses on lead search. It's not just buy a name at the beginning of the year. You're buying names at different points during the year for different purchases or for different purposes, and again, utilizing your recruiters there to make strategic moves on those populations. And of course, social media, as you well know, I can't keep up with it. A lot of my colleagues here probably would agree. That takes a very special person to devote the time and energy to do that very same thing, to meet those students where they are, okay? So in a lot of our offices, those 10 to 11 recruiters still remain hourly, yet we are talking about the profession and getting individuals on campus to really recognize those individuals who are feeding students into their programs as equals, as professionals on the campus. So we're looking to answer a lot of these issues on campus. Where are we with taking sort of a magnifying glass on what a successful enrollment management office looks like, and then making some corrections and some moves to fit that model. Now, we are not alone in our travails and in our enrollment challenges. There are other states and other regions that are facing and have faced the very same things we are facing today. So a couple of examples here. Ways that other institutions, or ways that other states and institutions within those states have answered these challenges are to look at educational reform. We talked about the third graders not necessarily being prepared when they come into college age. Scores not being exactly where they needed to be. Well, educational reform to increase college preparedness. How are we making sure within the state that those individuals that are college-aged and the institutions that serve those individuals have prepared them to go right into the university? Low tuition costs, incentive programs to attract students, and managing articulation agreements all become part of the solution. Evaluating academic offerings. Are we offering curriculum that meets the needs of students entering into the market? And are we making tweaks? And are we reducing time to graduation? Getting students out into the market quicker. Focusing on adult learner completion. We talked a little bit about not stop-outs. Folks that have gone into industry that are coming back to have to strengthen their professional resume. Focusing on those adult learners, giving them options, hybrid, online options for degrees, and helping to drive their skills and credentialing to get the jobs that they are after. Okay. So with that, I'll conclude, and we'll now take questions. We'll take a seat, and happy to answer questions from the board.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? Curator Hobrock.
I do. Is there any list sharing between the four schools? For instance, if S&T loses a student, do we transfer that name to the other institution and say, hey, do we help each other recruit?
I would say no, and the main reason why is that when we deny a student, there's about 20% of those who come back with us with a better score or an increased GPA, and we end up admitting those. So we want to continue to give them that opportunity. We also have a program with Moberly Area Community College for denied students. If they're denied to Mizzou, we want them to go to Moberly and be part-time enrolled at Mizzou, so that we can create that pipeline and give them the support they have advising both at Moberly, the campus in Columbia, as well as Mizzou. They live in our residence halls. So it's that pipeline. So for us, I would say no.
Well, to your latter question, there is an idea sharing process between the four institutions. We do meet quarterly to talk about, process, operations, innovation, technology, and then also best practices in industry.
Other questions?
I'll ask, actually I have one. I know you see a lot of debate about test optional nationwide. I know that's a settled question for UMKC at this point. But when you talk about the test scores going down, I know it's got to be additional effort for you all to evaluate these packets as a standalone without the test score. How do you see that working going forward? I mean, it's going to be hard to project success when we see their aptitude being scored in a declining way. Whoever wants to take that.
I can start. I would start by saying right now it's a heavy workload, and I've got people that are working an inordinate amount of hours reading that because we're still in a pilot program, and we, eventually if we were to go permanent, we would probably hire readers to help us during the key times in the fall. I would say that part of the reason for the low test scores isn't all to do with not being in class or anything. It was probably a lack of college test prep classes that a lot of students take advantage of, or not as many of those. That's probably another reason for that. But we need to get better. All the time. The longer we do test optional, the better data we have. We know what metrics predict success at our institutions. So for that reason,
I would say that's right, and we face many of the same issues. How do you look at a test optional student to really determine preparedness? And And a good indication of future success is past success. So if we're looking at a transcript and determining that they were successful within their high school career, that is a component of it. Plus other factors that we consider, an essay, the student's promise to move forward. This is going to take some tweaking, right? This is something that is, we are sort of answering every day. It takes a lot of time and energy, consistent with what Kim is saying, to review each one of those applications. It is a one-to-one process, and it's a deep dive into each of those applications.
Doug or Reggie, you have anything to add, or?
I'll just say research shows that the number one indicator for success for a test optional student is academic success and success inside, outside of the classroom, or engagement inside, outside of the classroom.
And I'll just close with that. It continues to be something that we continue to look at the data and review, and also to ensure we have the right services on the campus in general, so that we are supporting the student and making them successful to graduate.
Thank you.
Curator Holloway.
You know, the behavior change due to the small screen, due to the small screen, okay, and all the social media stuff. Now, are you addressing that with new hires? I mean, are you hiring people that are specifically engaged and have experience in that realm? It's hard for us more seasoned, okay?
I'll start off, and I'm sure my colleagues will share too. I think that's embedded in all of our practices now, just to ensure we're finding students that have the skill sets that are going to be able to really adapt and recruit those students in the right way. And it does take a very different approach, right? By learning how to use all those tools, as David outlined about the admissions office. And we are just dealing with a very different digital student. But at the end of the day, I just want to share too, we cannot forget about the relationship side of this. Digital's one thing, but you still got to talk to that student and talk to that family to bring back that authenticity.
Your CRM programs, are they adapting? Do you have new ones that you've tried, or is it still PeopleSoft that you're using on the different campuses, or how do you do it on your recruiting side?
Yeah, so all of us are still a PeopleSoft campus for the student information system, and then we also use the same CRM as well. And that system continues to evolve and change, and just like any of the other data systems that I mentioned earlier around some of our vendor solutions. So all of our teams that work on those systems continue to go through trainings and make sure we're taking full advantage of all the tools and integrations that are possible.
The only thing I would add is that anytime we do look at a new vendor for some kind of platform, we ensure that students can use it on their phones, that it's not just via computer or website. It's got to be available on multiple platforms.
Absolutely.
Any further questions?
Go ahead, Michael.
No, you first.
No.
You're more seasoned.
Oh, I love you. I guess I'm at slide 9. You're telling me that 21,000 high school students who graduate go to four-year colleges in the state of Missouri. I guess that's Missouri public school graduates. What percentage of those does our system get, of that 21,000?
30%, 35%. You get about 7,500.
Okay, so if we get only 35%, why don't we raise that number? Or can we raise that number? I know, I understand it's the peril of some other four-year institutions. It's not that I wish them all the success in the world, I truly do, but I really wish our universities more success. So how do we change that dynamic?
College preparedness.
It's what? Lee?
College preparedness. The number of students that we can recruit that are prepared to enter the university. And so if there's this many students graduate, how many of those students are prepared to enter the institution?
Okay, let me ask the question another way then, because I'm trying to understand that statement. 21,000, according to your data, 21,000 Missouri public high school graduates go to a four-year Missouri college. Of that 21,000, that have graduated from high school that are going to a four-year college are prepared to enter one of our four institutions.
So that 21,000 is not just Missouri, though those are four-year schools anywhere.
Correct, but they're Missouri graduates.
Correct.
Okay, that's good. Of that 21,000, do you have a sense of what percentage of that 21,000 are prepared to attend one of our four universities?
I would say no, although I do know, the average ACT in Missouri is 20 to 21.
Okay.
So a lot, that average, they wouldn't be admissible to our institutions.
But they would, but UMKC is not, it's a test optional school, so they would qualify for UMKC. Possibly?
They could, but we also, there's a lot of other pieces that go into making that admissions decision. And without getting into all the details, we have to make sure that they've had the right core and the right components to be admissible. So it's not like it's a very detailed recipe, if you will. So we have to make sure that they will be successful before we let them in.
As a follow from that, I understand from Southwest Missouri, and I grew up in Southwest Missouri, and I know that there's a tremendous attraction in Southwest Missouri for Arkansas. I understand. I grew up in that environment. And I think Curator Lehman relayed to me that a substantial portion of students that start at Missouri State transfer then to Arkansas. Have I understood that? Is that somewhere I've heard that? Do you know if that's true or not?
I don't know how many transfer to Arkansas, but I do know it's one of our top four-year feeders.
Or who?
Missouri State.
Missouri State is, okay. I'm trying to figure out how, of the 21,000, and we get 30% of them, how we can get more of the 21,000. Raise the percentage.
I mean, and that's always our goal. It's something we're always trying to do. There's so many factors, it's each individual decision. Sometimes it's a financial fit that they can't afford one of our institutions. Sometimes it's an academic fit. Sometimes they just don't feel like, there's just so many. We don't have their academic program. So there's so many things we went to, but we are always striving to bring in more Missouri residents. That's always our key. Mizzou, we visit every high school in Missouri at least once a year. And so it's always going to be our top feeder.
What effect, I just get right to the point on this one. If Missouri's basketball team made the Sweet 16, 5 out of 6 years, what would that do for MU's recruitment of students?
It would help a lot.
How much is a lot?
Well, if you look at history, back when we were at our highest, when
Okay.
we had over 6,000 students, that's when our football team was doing really well.
So you believe then there is a correlation to the performance of our intercollegiate athletes, and it's probably at all the schools, and enrollment numbers at the school going forward?
I think it helps with just marketing, publication, having our name out there, people seeing it on national TV all across the nation.
Do the other schools that have athletics, do they share that?
I definitely share that. I
Okay,
think
now
athletics.
you're in Kansas City, right?
I'm in Kansas City,
Okay.
yes. I think athletics plays a critical piece
Okay.
in bridging recruitment process to entering an institution.
Okay.
Again, that also brings about all the, not thinking of the right word, but all the camaraderie, if you will. As students come to the games, they engage, even new students who come to a prospective event. So yes, I think it's critical in how we recruit and market.
I assume that,
It's important, but less the case at a D2 school.
okay. And how about S&T?
That's correct as well.
Okay, all right, thank you.
It's less important.
Kim,
Thank you, Mike.
good questions, Greg. Kim, let me ask you this. Is there a number correlated to that? Do you have a dollar figure attached to that? Because as we think about investing in athletics, when you think about investment, you're always thinking about a return. That's one of the returns we would get. Do we have a number associated with any of that?
That's above my pay grade.
All right. We'll find it somewhere. I'm sure somebody come up with it. But. Any further questions? It was a good presentation.
Well, I think this is why you don't let the smarter guy go first, because I think he stole part of my question. But I'm going to ask it this way. In my mind, the way we are going to keep enrollment up as numbers go down is to having those personal relationships with the guidance counselors and the presence in the schools and having that, and I think Kim might have partially answered this when she was answering Curator Holbrook's question. But are we making a concerted effort to get back to, I know it stopped during COVID, but to get back to getting guidance counselors on the campuses or reaching out to them so that we have a relationship so that it becomes an option at that school? And that school's, they don't just send kids to KU or Arkansas. They think Missouri's a legitimate option because our counselors putting materials out and seeing those things.
Yeah.
I'll try to frame it this way. When I went to school, we applied to 3 institutions and we selected one. Now, students have choice. They apply to 10 to 12 institutions, and then there is a kind of a leveraging process to get the student, to convince the student of one of those 12 institutions. So students have choice. The consumer has more choice now than they did in the past.
So they're not relying on guidance counselors heavily anymore then?
No, I mean, their mobile device, websites, social media, et cetera, are driving their decisions.
See.
I would say we can still consider that a really important factor. And that's the reason why we visit every high school. Even, if we may have not gotten a student there in the last 5 years, we're still going to go and talk to that counselor and make sure they have the information. And it's opened back up this year, so we can do that. But we're also looking at ways to bring counselors back. We've routinely flew in counselors from Chicago or Texas or wherever, and we want to do that again to bring them here so that they get their feet on the ground and they can see, oh, wow, this is great. I remember when I brought my colleagues in from the other SEC schools and they stepped foot on campus, it's like, wow, you have trees. And it's like, yeah, we're not Kansas. So, we want to do the same thing with high school counselors especially from out of state who haven't had the chance to visit our campus.
That's absolutely true, and there is no silver bullet. And I think when we look at the slide, and this is something that we've talked about a lot, it is campus visits, it's the personal experience, it's having folks really connect with an admissions counselor, more importantly, a student or someone on campus that can give the Amazon customer review, in addition to all of these technologies that are now employed for these stealth students who are very transactional in nature. So that goes back to the Amazon, I purchase, I click a button, I'm done, don't have to talk to anyone. So there isn't one experience that's true that can sort of paste across our institutions. It is a sort of a mix of all of those things to really be successful.
All right, well,
Any further questions, curators? Great presentation. Thank you, everyone, for that presentation. It's really, really beneficial. Okay. Cindy, why don't we take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and jump into elections?
Sure.
Okay, so we'll take a 5-minute break. Everybody come back in 5 minutes. That'll be 2:30. Come back at 2:30. Okay, it looks like everyone's back. Okay, for our next item of business, we will elect board officers for next year. We'll take up the election of the board chair first. Okay, may I have a nomination for the Board of Curators Chair for 2023? Curator Graves?
I nominate Michael Williams. I have a 25-minute speech that I'm going to dispense with. Michael is a very distinguished graduate of the University of Missouri. He's received awards from the law school and from the undergraduate school, from the Alumni Association. He's a great colleague. He's always upbeat, and I'm proud to be able to nominate him.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I would be honored to second that motion. I think Michael will do a tremendous job next year.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Do we have any abstentions? All right, congratulations, Michael.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, may I now have a nomination for the Board of Curators Vice Chair for 2023? I would like to make this motion. So I move to nominate Robin Winokur for Vice Chair. Robin is known as the People's Curator. What does this mean? Robin has deep roots in the Columbia community. This is her home. She's an admired member of that community, and many are very proud of her accomplishments. She champions issues that are important to those people, and those people also care very much about the university. I am also very proud of Robin. This year, Robin chaired the Health Affairs Committee, led the board's efforts to hire a new general counsel, did a great job there, led the board's efforts to renovate University Hall, and led the board's efforts to transform athletic events into relationship-building opportunities for the curators with students, faculty, staff, donors, and other organizations. Robin cares about the university. She is passionate, protective, and fiercely loyal to our great institution. She has set high standards for how we should do business at the university. She also cares about the board and its members. Before he was killed in a tragic car accident, Robin was a mentor to our student representative, Remington Williams. She also worked diligently with his family to create the Remington R. Williams Award. Thank you for doing that, Robin. Robin often says that she simply wants to make the university a better place. I believe her, and I look forward to her leadership next year as vice chair. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I am pleased and honored to second the nomination for Robin. I serve on the Health Affairs Committee that she leads. She's always prepared. She gives all the effort that you could ever ask of a chairman and keeps the rest of us informed. And so I, again, am pleased and honored to second her nomination for vice chair.
Thank you, Keith. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Okay, Michael, would you like to meet me at the podium?
Is there hazing about to take place?
Always.
Yes, sir.
We are a non-hazing fraternity.
He'll take that.
Okay. So you have the gavel and the plaque?
Yes.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
It is my honor and pleasure to present our two-year chairman, Daryl Chapman, with his plaque and his gavel. I'm surprised Keith didn't try to steal the gavel. That's another story. But we appreciate all your hard work, your dedication, your willingness to listen, even though you are also leading, your ability to kind of let us all have our little moments of temper tantrums, but stay calm and keep us all moving in the right direction. So I truly admire you, I appreciate you, and I'm so proud of the example you have set for me.
Thank you, Michael.
You guys want to, is that turned the right way?
All right.
You had me nervous.
Thank you, Michael. All right. All right. Okay, so one of the, we joked earlier, but we do have traditions here at the Board of Curators, and one of those great traditions is the reading from our book here. It's called The University of Missouri, A Centennial History. I've held on to this book for the last 2 years. Julia read a passage for me, and I'm going to read a different passage this year. Usually, there's a statement of principles in the back of this book, pages 492 to about 497. And it's titled, this chapter is titled The Future by Frederick Arnold Middlebush, president of the University of Missouri. And in here, he talks about certain principles that he thinks the university should adhere to as it moves forward. Like I said, we typically read the first principle. I'm going to read principle 4 today for you guys, okay? The fourth principle I shall name uniquely belongs to our own university. I refer to the direct obligation of the University of Missouri to the state of Missouri, which brought it into being, fosters its continued existence, and upon which its future depends. The progress of the university during the last 100 years has been directly related to this service to the state. The university did not move forward unaffected by the development of Missouri. Its program was not planned upon a purely theoretical basis. From the outset, the university evolved as an institution closely connected, functionally, with all of the state's intellectual, cultural, and professional enterprises. Many researches important to our citizens have been prosecuted, and the results of this body of research have been made available constantly. Thus, through its well-balanced plan of organization, the university stands today prepared to render to the state a threefold service: the training of students, the prosecution of research, and adult education through the extension divisions, okay? I wanted to emphasize through that principle our commitment to the people of our state, our commitment to serve the people of our state, to reflect the people of our state. And so that's been a really important theme, I think, during the past couple of years of me being chair, and it really makes me proud to be here and serve this great institution. And I'm glad that we can do so for the people out there that pay the taxes, work hard, and support this great place every year, okay? So Michael, I turn it over to you. I have signed this book. There's a number of curators or chairs that have signed it. It's very, very heavy, you know, when I think about it. But I turn it over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, as Todd said, I am not one for brevity, and so I am going to speak. No, I'm really not. I want to thank my fellow curators for giving me this honor. As a person who didn't move to Missouri until I was, like in 8th grade, and my first trip to even know what the University of Missouri was from Missouri Scholars Academy. And I've been in love with this institution since then. I'm a very proud Kansas Citian, and I spend as much time on that campus as possible. I grew up right next to, well, my formative years, 8th grade on, right next to Rolla and St. Louis. I'm sorry, I didn't go to high school here, but I do appreciate this state, not as good as Kansas City, but I do appreciate this side of the state and cannot wait to spend more time down here. I don't want to do a whole long speech. I just want to say thank you to everyone, and I look forward to working with our administration to make the next year almost as good as Darrell made the last 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and congratulations. President Choi, did you have a few words?
So first of all, I want to thank Chair Chapman as well as Vice Chair Holbrook for leading the university during the past 2 years. If you think back, those past 2 years have been some of the most challenging that the university has faced. You've demonstrated strong leadership, very strategic vision, and you made us a stronger university as a result. So on behalf of the University of Missouri, we want to thank you for your many contributions. And I look forward to working with Chair Williams and Vice Chair Winokur to continue to lead this university because the work that we do is so important. So thank you.
Thank you, President Choi. Okay. At this time, I'd like to ask if there are any other items for the good and welfare of the board. Hearing none, this concludes the public portion of the board meeting today. The board thanks everyone for their time and reports. President Choi and I will be available during the press conference in a few minutes. The board will convene an executive session at 3 o'clock next door. Thank you, everyone.